something that sometimes escapes the conversation of financial independence is not about reaching the point where you can stop working. That is a nice thing to have, and I think my story is very unique in the sense that it was very early. It's good for headlines and it's good for attracting people to come to the webinars, but the real strength of this is once you figure out how money works, and once you have your system in place, once you start tracking, you know where the money is coming from, where it's going, and you know that you're safe in the sense that you are putting money aside and you're building, your buffer, you're building your wealth. And at some point you start investing and you see that working for you, and you understand how it works. Once you have those things in place, like you've figured out stuff, like if you have those few pieces in place, you're ahead of 99% of people, even much older people.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll start with a quick introduction to myself. So my name is Smeetha. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cashee, and today's host for the webinar. And we are joined by a very old friend of mine and someone who's an absolute expert on the topic we're going to talk about, which is financial independence. And I really hope today's session is informative and useful for everyone who's attending, and you can leave by really understanding the nature of the topic and sort of the steps that you can take to start thinking about this, or maybe even implementing this in your life if you wanted to. I also would like to let you know that there is a Q&A session towards the end. So if you have any questions, please type it in the chat or in the messages section, and we'll get to it at the end of the webinar. So we will have the last 10-15 minutes dedicated to questions. Just to let you know, we cannot see the attendees, but the attendees can see us. So just feel relaxed, feel free, and ready to get started. So Sebastien, just wanted to get started with a quick background on yourself. If you could let us know what got you to this point. Give us the background of when you started thinking about financial independence. What were the steps that you took? How long did it take you? So basically all the drivers, and then, once you achieve financial independence, what have you been doing since then?
Okay, so the whole story.
Yes, the whole story.
Sure, no worries. First of all, thanks for inviting me to this event, Smeetha. It's great being here, and I hope really this is going to help people. And usually it does, because it's a topic that is of interest to a lot of people, but it's difficult to understand how to actually apply or to implement in any way in our lives. And I've been very fortunate with many things in my life that have a lot of situations and things that have happened to me and that I've been able to work on, that have led to me being able to stop working at 33 together with my wife. And so now it's been 3 years, 3.5. We stopped in 2018, and we've been mostly focused on family since then. We have a 3-year-old and almost 1-year-old, so 2 boys.
Let me reiterate that point. You guys stopped working voluntarily at the age of 33, which is, most people are just getting started on their careers at that age, because, it takes about, say you've done an undergraduate degree, you've graduated at about 23, 24. Typically, a lot of people could do a master's degree, then they go in, say, another 2 years. By the time they're sort of not even mid-management, I would say somewhere between, entry level and mid is about the age of 30 to 33. And you've already achieved financial freedom by then, which is amazing. So, we'd really like to understand more about how that happened.
Yeah. So it is very unusual. But at the same time, there wasn't anything magic or genius about it. We were expats in Dubai, and both me and my wife, and we started our journey with personal finance personally when I was 26, right?
Okay.
And my wife, I met her a bit later, so we looked at all of that together a bit later. But basically when I was 26 is when I arrived in Dubai as an expat on an internship contract, very low pay, and not very low pay, but fairly low pay. And very basic conditions, tiny apartments in Sharjah at that point. And I was finishing my internship, and I just had enough savings for like surviving until my next job. And I was traveling and I lost those savings because I had the savings in cash in my pocket going back home, because at that point I had no idea about how all of this works. A bad idea. But I lost basically all my savings. And I flew back, and then I was waiting for my next job to start, but then I have a gap. I had 2 months, and I had to find a way to survive for 2 months with no money. And so that's where it started. It started because I had a massive challenge. I had to borrow money from my little brother back home. So it was like the big brother going to Dubai, coming back saying he's broke and borrowing from his little brother. That was a bit of the story, how it all this started. And that forced me to take control of my finances. So simply looking at where is the money going and where it's coming from and how much of each in both directions, and somehow making it work, right? So it's all about tracking.
Can we take a little bit of a moment and talk about how you lost your money, if that's something you're comfortable talking about?
Yeah.
So, because a lot of expats come here, and a lot of them have very little awareness of how money management works. How do they invest? Where do they invest? Who do they invest with? Who do they trust their money with? Is there something from your experience we could learn?
I don't think there's anything incredible there. It's just stupid me, right? I took the cash and I converted it into euros, and I moved the cash physically, so I had it with me on my travel back to Belgium. Bad idea, right?
Right.
And that's it. That's the whole story. I got home, it wasn't there. It's like it fell off my pocket somewhere in the airport or whatever, somewhere on the way. Gone. So all my savings gone like that. It wasn't very much. It was just enough to keep me for like a month or two. I was already very tight, and I lost that. So yeah, basically it started as none of this started because I was looking for financial independence. It started because I was forced. I was put in a position where I had a massive challenge and I had to figure out a way out. And I think that's how most people start on their personal finance journey. It's typically with a challenge, and they have to come out of it. And I would say it's almost a blessing to have had this difficult time, because it forced me to do something different, right? I had to figure
at a young age, that too, not when you're, say, 50 years old.
Yes.
So that's okay. That's great.
And then I think if I had stayed in Belgium, I don't think not any of this would have happened, because I wouldn't have had the challenge. But also, there's a bunch of things that are possible in the Middle East that are not possible in Belgium. But just that one challenge, if I didn't have it, I think it would have been very different. So I started tracking my finances, spreadsheet, what's coming in, what's going out. And at some point I was thinking, wait a second, I'm outside of Belgium. There's no pension system here. I need to figure something out, right? So I was doing some basic math with my spreadsheets, and I went to the different financial advisors in the region, to my HR, to banks, and all of this. And I started investing in a long-term savings plan, the thing that are sold everywhere in Dubai, that most expats have, and turned out they're terrible products for most people. But I was sold one of those, and I jumped in, and I invested my savings for my pension in there, and only realized later how bad of a deal it was, and how there was actually an alternative, which is the whole index investing aspect of things, which we can talk about if you want. But so I realized that the industry wasn't there to help us. So I had to figure out a way to do this myself in a simple way, something that doesn't involve active investment or trading or anything like that. Something super simple, long term. And so I learned how to do that, and I started investing in that way. And that's pretty much it. Like there's nothing genius. It's about I realized that I could invest, and then I realized how powerful the effect of compounding interest could be. And I did the math, I made a few projections, and I looked at the results. And at first I was just planning, okay, I need to save so much so that I have enough at 65, right? Target retirement. But after a while I was like, wait, I have a bit more saved now. I'm able to save a bit more. So what do I do with this money? Okay, I was thinking about buying stuff, and I started buying stuff. I bought a nice BMW, and I moved into a nice apartment.
Oh, did you?
I started spending.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, pension, I think I have something figured out. Now I can, splurge a bit. But at some point I was like, wait, I don't really need all this stuff. What if I invest it as well, right? And that's when something clicked. Okay, wait, if I put more money, I could stop working earlier. Right? And I was like, oh, okay. And so, like, how early can I stop working? So I started flipping the whole thing around in my own head. And around the same time, I discovered the whole financial independence movement. And that's something that's been it's been around now since mid 2010 or so. And so I realized that there's a lot of other people who are doing this. And I was just lucky to be in a place where I was able to work and deliver high value to my clients and my employer and be paid well in return. And then I was able to save. So without falling into the trap of consumerism and showing your status via the stuff that the car you drive or certain aspects of your lifestyle,
where you live,
where you live. And so just kept a simple, humble lifestyle, but and managed to save a lot and invest. So that's it. It's only saving and investing in a simple way that got me where I am today.
Yeah, but Sebastien, I think there's an important point here, which is while you make it sound really simple, it's not. And I think that, when you're living in a place like Dubai, you do fall into the trap of consumerism. And I think most of us do at some point. And the fact that you've realized this at a very young age, and then you've decided to take a step back and you've seen the bigger picture, a lot of us haven't been able to do that, or probably will not be able to do that. So, don't discount the fact that in itself is a really, really hard step. Mm-hmm. Though anybody can do it. Yes. It's a mind game, but it's a hard step. Yes. And once you have mastered that, that's really the solution to your problems.
Yes.
Once you are able to stay away from all the unnecessary expenses and, be able to decide for yourself, what is it that I need and what is it that I want? That's the main thing, right? And then what do you do with the money is the next step. But I think the first step in itself is something that, while it's super easy for you now, it's very hard to get started with. And especially, when you're young, you just graduated, you're getting a salary, you want to spend it. It's very difficult to not spend it and, save it for the future, which is such a long way off. It's very hard to comprehend. So definitely give yourself some credit for the fact that you've done that at a young age, which a lot of people will find very hard to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's quite unique. I would say my message is that it's doable because I'm an engineer. So yes, I like spreadsheets, but that's probably the only thing. Yeah. Aside from that, it was a job in Dubai and I had a fairly good life. It is about the mindset of finding value, like realizing what really brings you value and what is fluff that costs a lot of money for very little fulfillment. Yeah. And so it's really, there's a life mindset or a way of pursuing fulfillment that basically we realize it doesn't necessarily involve spending a lot of money.
That's right.
And from there, you realize also that money, basically you decide where your money goes. And when you are conscious about the way you handle your money, where it goes and what it buys for you, and it could be stuff, it could be things you need, it could be nice holidays, which we spent on, but it could also be freedom. And so it really depends on, okay, what do I value most? More stuff, more things I need, more holidays, more freedom, right? And I guess I realized that there was a way to buy freedom, which is something that's often missing in the picture. People are thinking either I save and I basically, that's money that I'm never going to use until I'm super old, or maybe it's going to be used by someone else, or I spend, right? That's kind of the two options most people have. And so we say, well, I'm going to save some because people say it's good, but I'm going to spend because that's how I feel better, or like I bring fulfillment. But I think there's a third option, which is investing in freedom, buying freedom, but like opening up time in your life where you don't have to do something because of money. You basically do what you want because you have enough. I guess that's another concept of enough. No, that's also something that we can talk about. But I think just the idea that there is a third option aside from spending and saving. It's like buying freedom, spending on freedom. That is something that probably is missing a lot.
Yeah. And let's talk about the topic of freedom. So when I got into the whole discussion and understanding the concept of financial independence and financial freedom, what I was struck by is how little this is being talked about. So yes, there is a movement, it is growing, but I would say on an average, a lot of people haven't heard about this. Primarily because, first of all, this is not taught in school, so you're not listening about it from teachers. Your friends are definitely not discussing it. It's only if you chance to happen on another person who's heard about it, is implementing this in his or her life, that you would probably come across it. But the old school way of thinking of, okay, I graduate at, I don't know, 22, 23, I work until I'm 60, 65, whenever I retire, and then I must retire. That story is still continuing. And I think that over generations, this hasn't changed. And this is why I was really keen on having you on our webinar here, because I really want to spread the message about financial independence, because I feel like teens, and our target audience at Cashee are teens between the ages of 13 and 21, is if you understand this concept now, this will serve you more than anything else in your entire life. So in your opinion, what is the reason why and you are the founder of FiRE Belgium, you are talking about this, you have a community that you are helping out. Why is this not being talked about more often?
So lack of awareness, I think, and as you said, it's just not in the culture. For most people, it's difficult to even imagine it's possible. So I think it mostly is something people don't even realize is possible.
It's possible.
So
yes, exactly.
You can't even pursue something that you don't know exists or is possible, right? So
yeah.
I think there's just a lack of awareness. If people knew from the start that you can choose, like either you work and spend and then work longer, or you work and spend less, invest and work less. Like if that was a framework presented early on, then people would be thinking about this, and then everyone would find ways, I think, to basically find what works for them. No, some people just don't mind working and spending more. That's fine, right? And working longer, and then they're not really after this need for freedom. But some of us really want that freedom, flexibility, security that comes with this. But I think it's just a lack of awareness at the basic level. And like even, I don't know, like in politics, just no one thinks about this. It's super simple. But
nobody thinks about this, which for me is the surprising thing, right? I mean, everybody talks about having a career, making a lot of money, but no one talks about, okay, when are you going to stop working? Why don't you stop working 20 years before you think you can possibly stop working? So for me, this is surprising. Now, when you say you started on this journey in your, say, mid to late 20s, what percentage of your income were you saving at that point in time?
Yeah, so it changed quite a bit. Early on, I think I started at 20%. There was a period where I was really, cutting on everything, super intense and all this. I was at 60, 65 at least. Okay. And then as my salary grew, that became easier to achieve. So I think towards the end, I was anywhere between 50 and 60. And fairly comfortably, because my whole life was designed and optimized for all of these things of being very simple and low cost.
Can you give us some examples of how you did this? For example, what were the expenses that you said, okay, I'm not going to do these anymore? And how did you optimize your life to make it easier?
Yeah, so there's various things. A simple example is the car, right? I bought this BMW and it's not cheap to run, it's not cheap to maintain. And I had a few technical issues with it. So it cost me quite a bit of money. And at some point I was like, I actually don't really need that, because there's a decent public transport system in Dubai. And also at that point I was with my wife, who had a car that was much more efficient, effective, also cost effective. And we figured that, well, one car is enough actually. So I'm just going to sell this useless, fancy,
but nice looking,
nice looking ego, supporting,
ego boosting.
You're right. It was really a toy. Like I was driving this thing a bit like a man, like with my music, and like I was really enjoying it. But I realized that it wasn't serving my ultimate goal of just, building security, be free and be with my wife. And like, it was, a bit of a hard change, because it's something I enjoy, but I realized it's an enjoyment because it's kind of soothing my ego, right? It's like, look at me, I'm driving this car. And I knew, I was like, I like it, but at the same time, I'm like, do I really need this? Like, it's like, isn't this a bit silly to just play this game like everyone else around with? Everyone has a bigger car, a nicer car than me anyway. So what's the point of this car, right? Because of course, in my colleagues, someone was driving this thing and a Porsche and the thing, and I was like, okay, so maybe I'll just give up the game. But it was a combination of different things. I realized also I didn't enjoy so much traffic jams. I really enjoyed being in the metro with my headphones on, listening to amazing stuff, either podcasts, webinars, or ebooks or audiobooks. Sorry. So I was really doing a lot of intense learning during that time, which I couldn't do when driving because I had to focus. So that's one example. Another example is my accommodation. So obviously, I guess maybe now is a good time to share one slide.
Okay.
Because then I think it's a good time. I'll just bring it up.
Are you able to see me now?
Yes, it should be fine.
Great.
I call it the financial independence formula. I guess it's also a good time for everyone to see this. Financial independence is when your passive income is bigger than your living expenses. It's very simple. So it's a very simple formula. It sounds crazy, the financial independence, but really it's like just these two things next to each other. When one is bigger than the other, you're good. You're financially independent. Now, how to get there faster? Yes, you have to generate more passive income. So that's typically through some kind of investment, either building with your time or investing money, right? And so earning more to be able to invest and then investing wisely. This is typically the way forward. But then reducing living expenses, which is what we're talking about now. I think there's two main components to this. One is the structural changes that you can make in your life. And for example, transport for me was a major structural change in my day-to-day life, in the way I just conduct my life and I live. And then the mindset changes we talked about earlier a little bit. No, the values approach is really the way I look at this. Is I'm happy to spend on the stuff that I value. That's it. And the key is then to figure out what I truly value and what society wants me to value, and actually just realizing I'm going to protect the stuff I value and I'm going to let go of what society wants me to value. And what, the things I value are simple. No, it's like good time with close friends, with my wife and my family. I like learning. I like being fit. I like the sun. I like traveling, and I like having a good time, right? But that doesn't involve, 1,000 dirham nights out on Saturday or Friday night or something. No, it involves just being with friends, and that doesn't have to cost a lot. So that's just values approach. That's, I think, important. And then the structure changes, you have to basically make those so that you can have what you value without and while being cost effective. And so here, transport, housing, location. Location is a big one. And I was just lucky in the sense that I ended up in Dubai. That's very lucky because there essentially the ceiling on income is very different from other countries, right? So it would be impossible in Europe to earn as much doing what I was doing. Right. And so in the Middle East, you can be rewarded. If you bring high value, you get high value in return if you're able to negotiate and you're respected and all of that, obviously. But it's possible, right? So location for me played a big role. And then housing is the last example I want to tell you about. Is I used to live in my own studio in the Greens, and it was, it's fairly cost effective already. But basically, I realized being on my own in my own studio, that's sort of a fancy thing in a fancy place with a nice pool and all this, isn't exactly what made me feel good. I was feeling good about that studio when I had friends over or when I was at other people's place. Like alone in there, I was like, no, that's not how I feel good, right? And so at some point, my friends were putting this co-housing project together, and I jumped in right away. I was the first to say, yes, let's do this. And so we rented the villa together, and it became a co-housing project, and that was amazing. Like, it lowered the cost a little bit, but mostly it increased the quality of life by just being around people that I enjoy being with and having this community life, your own privacy in your separate space, but also a common space with lots of stuff going on. And that was so much more fulfilling than being alone on my place and just having to go somewhere or invite people over to be, to have the social connections that I needed. So to me, these are the biggest things. That's what played the biggest role.
An important point here, Sebastien, is what you mentioned about the values approach and your mindset changes. And this is something I had also had a discussion with in my last webinar. Is it's really important to understand as an individual what your values are and what drives you in life, and for you to prioritize your spending and your money behavior according to that. So for example, you've given us excellent examples of the changes you made in terms of housing, transportation, and location, which are probably not the changes I would have made because of the values in my life. However, that doesn't matter, because whatever you value and you feel like you must spend towards because it's good for your well-being, in another way where you spend, I will hold back. So it averages out. It averages out in the end.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's very personal. And, obviously these are, I'm showing here the examples where it's made a big change in my life.
Yeah.
But some other areas I was spending more, right? We were traveling a lot with my wife. Obviously budget, backpack, because we could. But now we still travel a lot. We have family. And so we spend the money that it takes because traveling is part of what we want to do. And if we have to spend more, we spend more, right? And that's completely okay. If you have a hobby that you enjoy a lot and you need good equipment for it, go for it, right? Whatever it is. It's really, it's spending on what is important to us. And then what's as part of that, there's a bucket that's called freedom. And spending on freedom for us is very high on the list. So we had a lot of it going there, right? That's all. We just basically we compare what we value, and amongst those things, there's freedom. And so when we make spending decisions, we benchmark it to, okay, how much freedom is that worth? Sort of, no, we sort of have an idea. Having a BMW that costs a lot it's not like it just costs money, it costs years of freedom. That is the real price to me. Was like, am I willing to work an extra whatever month, like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to be able to afford this car? Am I willing to do that? Is that something that I think is worth the trade? And the answer was no. Right. And obviously it was, very intense job and, high stress. So maybe another job would have been like, yeah, no problem. But it's obviously the high stress job that pays well too. So
exactly. I was going to say that it's the high stress jobs that are actually the better paying ones.
Yeah. So clearly this played a role. Yeah.
Great. And so this was okay. So these were some examples of how you reduced your living expenses. And then you mentioned that at one point in time, you got into the whole financial independence movement. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into it and sort of what changed? What sort of steps did you implement to invest your money and grow your money?
Yeah, so the financial independence movement is something that existed abroad, not so much in the Middle East or in the UAE, but we were discussing ways to invest because that is the biggest sort of struggle in terms of. But how do I actually do it? I understand that to be able to build freedom, I have to invest in a good way, and so it's about finding the way to invest that suits your profile. And to me, stock market investing was the way forward, but not the stock market investing that we see in the movies. So no active management, no trading, no speculation, no stock picking, but really a simple, efficient way of investing, buying the whole market, buying all of the companies that are available on the stock market globally in just one transaction, and balancing that with something very safe like bonds. And that's it. Super simple, buy and hold, no work to do, no news to follow, no small like bets to place. No, it's just we take the growth of the total economy and we just get that, right? And it just turns out that statistically, this leads to far better results than any kind of active management because it's much lower cost. There's a lot less losses in terms of trading and all of this. So statistically, it's far more efficient to do this on your own without a bank, without a financial advisor that are going to try to push your money into places where they get paid. When they get paid, that's money that comes out of your investments, right? So that's returns that don't come to you. So it's this whole philosophy of learning a simple approach to investing for the long term without relying on those middle managers, middlemen that take their cuts and basically slow the growth of your investment. And that is
Can you talk a little bit here about you mentioned that you had invested with one of these sort of companies, and how did that work out?
Well, I was paying all the fees, which were very high. So it wasn't very good. Overall, if I had invested in an index fund the way I've discovered later, I would have done 25% better. And that was at the point I was, so in dirham, that would have been 50,000 dirham difference, and I think it was just over a few years. And I was investing 3,000, so 50,000 difference. I was investing 3,000 a month. So that's like many months of investing that were gone in fees.
Years,
right? You do the math, it's like at least 2 years. Wait, 3 times 12 is 36. So no, like 4 years, like 3 years. Yes, 4 years. 4 years. So 4 years of contributions were gone in fees. Like imagine it's just that was insane. So and this is what most people in the UAE are in. right?
Yes.
They are in
And
those
I've heard
plans.
so many stories of people losing their life savings because they've invested in something like this for 5 years, 10 years.
Yes.
They realize it and then it's too late and they have to just let go.
Yes, yes, and often we sign contracts that we don't understand, and
Yeah.
basically the clauses in there is that if you want to quit early, you lose a big chunk of this, and that's often still the best way to deal with it is to cut it short, stop the bleeding, take the loss, take the hit, forget, and then move on and do the right thing properly, which is what I did. No, so so bad experience, and the whole industry is like that. That's how they make money. So obviously they push the products that make them money, but that's also the worst for you. As an investor. So for you, the best way is to learn, really figure out how to do it yourself. And if you need support, you have to find support that is very clear on the fees, but also that is there to support you. And there's not very many platforms that will do that for you. So the best is to learn yourself. And Simplify is basically the community that was born out of this work that I was doing for myself and sharing around me. So basically I was looking for people who were like me, like understanding that this was an issue and wanting to move forward. And there were a few people who had discovered a similar approach. And then I realized that we were 5 in the UAE to talk about this stuff. I was like, so we have to tell this to the others. It doesn't work like this. And so we started giving talks. I was giving talks at work, in my own home. I was inviting all my friends, and then we started organizing bigger talks. And we went to 800 people in some of these talks, just sharing this simple knowledge and trying to.
And now I think Simplify is a group of over 20,000 people in the UAE. So just for our attendees, Simplify is called Simply FI. It's a group on Facebook. You guys can join it. It's free, and there's just so many active discussions ongoing all the time on anything related to money and investments. It's one of the most useful resources out there in the UAE as an expat at the moment. And I believe teens can join it as well. This is what I think Tuni had told me. There's no age limit, so you can join whatever your age, and you'll be fine. And the advice that you get on the group is amazing. So I would highly recommend that. And that's something that I personally also joined. I learned about financial independence. And while I'm still on my journey towards financial independence, it's something that, like you said, it's, you learn about all of it upfront, how to do it. And then you just forget about it, because then you're just investing, you just leave it, and there's, not much time commitment required. And your money is just growing and growing.
It's a very effective way of investing, because as you said, it takes very little time. So it takes a while to figure out how to do it. And once you know, it's 5 minutes a month, just the time it takes to make the transfer, basically. That's all. But once you've set it up, that's it. It's buy and hold and long term, and no need to worry about anything. Things going up and down, that doesn't matter, because you're investing for the very long term. So that's the beauty of it. And I guess it makes sense for teens to look into this, because obviously the power of investing is starting early it's very important, because then you have much longer time for compounding interest to work for you, compounding returns to do their magic, and financial independence. So it's not even about reaching financial independence. I think it's about having financial security, realizing that you have a backup plan, that you have space. Something that sometimes escapes the conversation of financial independence is not about reaching the point where you can stop working. That is a nice thing to have. And I think my story is very unique in the sense that it was very early. It's good for headlines and it's good for attracting people to come to the webinars. But the real strength of this is once you figure out how money works, and once you have your system in place, once you start tracking, you know where the money is coming from, where it's going, and you know that you're safe in the sense that you are putting money aside and you're building, your buffer, you're building your wealth. And at some point you start investing and you see that working for you, and you understand how it works. Once you have those things in place, like you've figured out stuff, like if you have those few pieces in place, you're ahead of 99% of people, even much older people. Like I speak all the time to people who are in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, my uncles and teachers and like all sorts of really like senior people. And when I was young, I thought these guys, they have everything figured out, right? Like they're senior managers, CEO, and this and that. They all have these massive titles. Financially, they have no clue what's going on. And they're sometimes in worse situation than most people in this community. So if you can set those things, foundations, like early in life, oh my God, you're going to be ahead of everyone. And tracking is the first level, right? There's no, you have to track, understand where it comes from, where it's going, make sure there's a difference that is positive, that you can save, figure out how to invest at some point. You don't have to rush, but at some point. And when that's working for you, that's it. You've got your money. Basically, every dirham, euro, dollar that you put in there is basically a little guy that you put in the factory that's making more money for you. That's it. You just put more of them in there, and at some point, that stuff is generating income that pays for your life, and you're done. But I would say that's not the goal. It's like you get so many of the benefits way before, right? Once you have the system in place, that's already freedom. That's already freedom. Because the very first, I'm sorry, I'm rambling here a bit, but the very first level of freedom is when you realize that you don't depend on your employer, society, your bank, like the whole economy, politics, your family, whatever. You don't depend on any of this. You've got your system figured out, and it's a system that's been working for 200 years. It's going to work in the future. It keeps working forward. You're in such a good place to enjoy life, like just grab it and have fun, really, because it's super powerful. So it's really this feeling of security and confidence and peace of mind, that the one thing that most people struggle with the most in the entire life is money. You have it figured out.
Yeah,
that's insane in terms of confidence for everything you do. Like if you're a guy and you're going after girls, it gives you confidence. If you're a girl and you need confidence because it's hard as a girl too, that gives you confidence because you figured out something really hard. And if you're looking for a job, you can go very confidently. You're not at the mercy of the employer. If the restructuration in your first job, you're confident. If you're studying, you're confident. Like it's just this confidence, this peace of mind will help you do so much in your life.
Yeah, and I think it's just like you said, it gives you the confidence of if something happens, you'll be fine.
Yes.
And if you lose your job, you'll be fine. If there's an emergency in the family, you'll be fine. And it just gives you that peace of mind that most people don't have.
Yes. And in most cases, when you're speaking to the people in front that's giving you the bad news, there's a good chance that they don't have a strong system and a good control of their own finances and their own life. So like in a way, you're not losing. Like you figured out something that's super powerful and that most people don't understand or they haven't figured, and they're stressing about it, and you don't have to. I think that's just magic. To me, it played a big role. I keep saying that I had a hard job and paid well. My personal finance confidence allowed me to do that. I was bold. I could deliver. I had no fear. I would say what is right, not what they expect. I just, in a way, like you have this positive energy around you. It pushes things forward. It comes back to you. It's this positive karma thing. But when you have this confidence, it is there and it works.
Did you, how long did it take for you to achieve financial freedom from the time you started till the age 33?
So after my internship, I was at zero.
Yeah.
I started my job 1st of August, 2011. And then I quit on 31st of July, 7 years later, 2018. So 7 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And was this by any, chance accelerated by combining the incomes of, by the time you got married? Because that could also be a factor is when you're married to somebody, it could be accelerated.
Yes. So finding a partner that shares the same values is super important.
Yeah.
Because it's otherwise a disaster for many years. And obviously financial values and financial freedom was one of those, and we did connect really well on many aspects of our lives. And yes, she contributed half of all of this. Like she's as responsible and she deserves all the credit as much as I do. The only difference is I'm speaking about it and she's happy to just be a mom and be like just enjoying life. But she's done all of the work alongside me. So yes, this is the two of us, and I think it played a very big role. If it was just me, it would have taken a few more years on my own to pay for my own expenses. When you combine, obviously there's economies of scale, and it leads to kids also who also cost money, but these are things you can figure out, no problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly finding the right partner played a massive role in this. Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what it is you're doing now with FiRE Belgium?
You want the short one or the long one?
Whatever, whatever you like.
Yeah. So FiRE Belgium is kind of an accident, in the sense that I didn't really want to speak about money anymore. I've been running Simplify for 5 years, and I've sort of given all my presentations, and it's all there. It's all available for everyone to learn from in the UAE. And there's a great team. It runs. It's really having a massive impact. But it was when I reached financial independence, I was looking at, okay, what do I do next? Right? It's kind of a strange question to ask someone who's like, okay, so you reach retirement, but 32 years too early. What do you do for those 32 years? You're gonna go on the beach and and relax, or so it's a tough question, because all of a sudden you don't have the excuse of, well, I have to go to work, so I have to earn money, so that's kind of what I'm gonna do. And then if I have time, I'll do something. Here it's like I have all this time. What do I do with it? And so in a way, there's a bit of a sense of responsibility that I've decided to take, which is, well, it's an opportunity. I can, I feel like this is important. And my entire career was driven by impact. I was working in, climate change, sustainable development, and renewable energy in the region, always seeking impact, scaling the projects I was working on and all that. And so that was also a key criteria for me to decide what I'm going to do next. Now, obviously, right after I stopped, I didn't go straight into something else. I really enjoyed my time. I relaxed. I slept a lot. I went to the gym. I watched a lot of TV and shows, and did nothing for a while. amazing time. But then after a while, I wanted to be involved in things that were important to me. And so, driven by impact, there's a bunch of, communities and groups that are working on trying to find the best way to do the most good in the world. And one of those, the one that spoke the most to me, is effective altruism. So it's actually something that could be quite interesting to very young people. Effective altruism is a movement that is looking at how can we do the most good using the resources we have and following logic and reason and data and evidence, right? So what are the things that me as an individual can I do to make the most good in the world, whatever, with the time I have now, but also with my career and all of that. And so they have some of these tools around career selection. How do you have the biggest impact? Anyway, that's the long story. I'm gonna go a bit further. And there's a number of things that I was very interested in, and I tried, and I could have committed to. My issue was most of these projects were fairly high level, very intense, required full-time commitment. And at that point, my family was growing. I had the first son, and we were planning on having a second. I couldn't commit to something full-time. So I was a bit in between two things, where I wanted to go and support these things, but it didn't really fit my current needs from a personal life perspective. And so just because randomly I started a Facebook group in Belgium, sharing, I wanted to find people like me in Belgium, like I did at first in the UAE. I wanted to find people like me in the UAE with Simplify. So this group started going. It was sort of, it's just a community where people talk to each other and support each other the same way Simplify works, but for Belgium. And so I started spending more time there, because I realized I still aim to work in that direction of maximum impact. And personal finance is one element. And I think there I have a unique opportunity to make a difference because of my story, my experience, what I can teach, and my experience teaching. So I've done a lot of work to help people with the personal finance. And there's a business now that I've set up to support people. So I teach how to start investing to people in Belgium. It's very similar to what's going on in the UAE, but and I could do that too. It's not part of what I do right now, maybe in the future. So that's sort of a business that I have developed that supports the community. Right now, I'm not paying myself. It's a business that just generates some resources that I can use to reinvest to help deliver more stuff. I'm hiring people to help me. Because I don't have much time. I spend my time mostly with my kids. And so in the 15 hours that I have when they're sleeping, I do a few things, and now I'm sort of building a business that allows me to basically do more, because now I have money to pay people to help me. And so short term, the idea is to simply help as many people just find financial security through better money management and investing. And and long term help them realize that money is good, can have a massive impact in your own life, but also can have a massive impact in other people's lives.
Exactly.
Money and time, no? So reaching financial freedom, it's all of this time that could be dedicated to a better cause, but also resources that could be dedicated to a better cause. And I think that is where I'm going long term. I wanna bridge the two, and help people realize that there's so much we can do, so much good, and how fulfilling it can be to do good beyond just oneself or our family and connections nearby. But that's like long-term ambition. As you can see, it's kind of a long story. But so Financial Independence Belgium is this group where people learn how to reach financial independence via good money management, investing, and all this.
And what's the typical age group that you're dealing with?
Between 20 and 30, mostly
Okay.
up to 40. These are typical people in the group.
Yeah.
There are some people who are students, so 18, 19, yes, and they've started investing. I've been teaching them. They took my course. So yeah, there are people who start very early.
What's your advice for teens who cannot open their own trading accounts right now?
I think early on in life, it's probably not
that important.
Yes, it's slightly less important than everything else that you can do.
Yeah.
On average, for most people, no. I mean, there are also some people who are kind of gifted for some things and they start very young. But I think for most people, if you figure this stuff around your 20s, it's fine. That's completely okay. I would say, as a teen, I would learn good money management skills. I think that's important. Figuring out how this stuff works. Yeah. And I think if you get very good at it and you have a passion for it, then go and find a way to start investing in a simple, like the same way all the people invest. No, it's like pick an index fund, an index ETF that invests in the entire world at the lowest possible cost. Simply buy this and hold. That's it. Super simple. Later in life, you can add bonds, which is something that will stabilize the investment, like the fluctuation over time. But that's it, really. And oh my God, I wish I knew all this when I was a teen.
So do I. What do you have any opinion on all these new age, which is going to be the future forms of investment in crypto and in things like NFTs? Because that's sort of where the Gen Z are interested in right now.
Yes, for sure. I think there's potential that they will play an important role. And to me, it's a thing to keep an eye on, but it's not something I would bet my pension on. Yeah. So I would say for people who want to invest seriously on something that's proven to work, evidence-based, long-term, and that relies on the entire world economy, right, including Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain and NFTs, and it includes all of that because it's part of the economy. Then the stock market, widely diversified, low-cost index fund will cover all of this. Now that is, I would say, I call this serious investing, and it's for the money you're not sort of playing with. I wouldn't say it's playing when you do the other type of investment, but they're a lot more speculative. They're non-proven. We don't know if this whole thing will still be around in a few years because it's subject to all sorts of things that we can't really predict. The stock market has been there. It's going to be there in the next 50 years. This could become part of the economy, the new age, or the whole blockchain, crypto, NFT space. It could. And it will. My personal opinion is it probably will. Right? It seems that it's going in that direction. It will be part of it, but the rest will be there and it will benefit from that. So to me, investing in the stock market is not saying no to crypto. It's saying, yes, I'm buying everything. I'll have crypto, I'll have Tesla, I'll have rockets, I'll have Walmart, I will have everything. Chinese companies, Japanese companies, and when Africa booms, I'll have Africa. When some other countries do well, I'll have them because it will be in the index. Everything. True. If crypto becomes a big thing, I will have it. Right. So that's the beauty of it, is that it has it in it because it buys everything. But if you want to be more targeted, specific with specific projects, whether it's NFT or crypto, blockchain, you can. I would just say don't look at this money as pension money or financial independence money, because whatever is happening there will change. At some point, whatever project you're picking won't be as good as it used to be.
And I think the biggest difference is the amount of time commitment you need to give to one versus the other. Is you have to constantly be aware, watch the news, track these companies, and if that is what you're willing to do, then probably go for it. But if that's not what you're willing to do, then sort of the other index investing is the way to go.
That is the most passive way of investing, like much more passive than real estate or any kind of other investment. You just buy, hold, don't touch it. That's it.
Yeah.
Indeed. Any other project, if you do more of the crypto stuff, and it's like there's a lot more work on a regular basis to just follow what's going on.
Yeah.
A lot of research up front as well to figure it out. And then.
Yeah. Great. I think with that, those were my questions. Attendees, any questions from you guys? I don't see any questions in the chat. I think everyone's just very,
I see 2 questions in the Q&A.
Do you see?
There's a Q&A tab with 2 questions from RDS.
There we go. RDS. Which percentage of joint income were you saving? And also if your returns were over the journey higher than a global ETF, then by how much?
Percentage of joint income, I think we were about between 50 and 60%. So we were both saving about the same and contributing about the same to expenses with my wife. So about 50 to 60% on most of the journey. I think one thing to realize as well, that is one part of why we were able to do this is a very high savings rate. Another part is that cost of living back here in Europe is lower than what we used to have in the Middle East. So in that sense, normally, if you're able to save 50% of your income over a long period of time, and the stock market has an average return of that period of time, it takes between 14 to 17 years to get to financial independence starting from zero. Right. But for us, this 50% savings was simply, it's not 50% of those 50% is not what isn't, we wouldn't be spending the same back home. So it goes a lot further in different places. So if you decide to move to a place where life is much cheaper, then all of those calculations for financial independence calculation don't really necessarily apply. You just have to redo the math based on your new cost of living, right?
Correct.
And then on the question of whether our returns were better than the global ETF, no, because we invested in a global ETF. Global indexing ETF buys everything, and we had a sizable portion of bonds as well. So our returns are just a combination of those two. And that's it. It's much better than what any bank or fund could do over the long term. And the market has been amazing in the past 10 years. So we've been, very lucky from that perspective too. The markets have played a role.
And then Najara has a question. How much did you save to retire? How do you account for kids in that?
So I think on the saving side, I think the percentage is a good number. So 56% is what I would say I was saving on a UAE salary and cost of living. I think cost of living was fairly low because we had optimized quite a few things, right? And then how do you account for kids' liability? I guess moving back to Europe was also a positive move in that direction.
Schooling is cheaper.
Good, we have good social system. School is cheap. Nurseries are expensive, but we don't have to go to work, so we don't pay for nursery. We just love to keep our
amazing.
Little boys. They're always with us, right? Now they're downstairs, and my 11-month-old is just amazing. Everyone wants to cuddle him, and I get to do that all day long. He sleeps in my arms, like all of his naps. It's me, right?
Oh wow!
Most of them is in my arm, and then sometimes I can put him down, but sometimes I just keep him because I like it. Anyway, cost of kids not so much. Education here is great, so I guess that's but that's something that you would probably have to include in your forecasted expenses for a certain period of time. So you don't have to say this is forever and this and that, but have some money aside for them based on what you expect they will cost. We had a small budget, very tiny. It's very, very small budget because we know it doesn't cost so much to have kids here.
In Europe, I think depending on where you end up living with your children, that will impact your calculations.
Yes.
Yeah. And Adi is asking, could you tell us a little bit about the journey of Cashee so far? Okay, great. So I will end with that question, but if you guys have any other questions for Sebastien, please let us know via chat. So Adi, about Cashee, so we started Cashee, it was in July 2020, and it's been over, so almost a year and a half since then. As you may be aware or not, we've partnered up with First Abu Dhabi Bank in the UAE and their processor Magnati. And together with them, we are bringing Cashee live to the UAE. And it's not just the UAE, we have ambitions of launching Cashee in some of the major markets across GCC as well. We are in the sort of the last final stages of our implementation with Bank Fab, and we should be hopefully announcing a launch date next week. And in the interim, I'm not sure if you're a teen or if you're a parent, but if you're a teen, you can download Cashee and participate in our referral program, which allows you to earn some money while we're waiting for the final app to launch. But once we launch, we're offering teens between 13, well, our target group is 13 and 19, but we've kept it open until 21. You are, so with Cashee, you'll get a free banking application as well as a prepaid Visa card. That's in a nutshell what we are doing with Cashee. And of course, I mean, we'll have other elements such as this webinar is one of the things, but we really want to not just have the fintech product, but we're really focused on also making sure that our users and sort of the wider community benefit from the financial literacy and the education that we are going to be implementing in the UAE and in the wider GCC later on. So this is, one of the sort of the first steps towards that direction. Great. So I think that, okay, so this year the world inflation is one of the highest. How do you make sure your investments will be fine if your expenses keep increasing due to inflation? That's a question for you.
Yes, I see. No, it's a very good question. It's true that
it's a good one. Yeah,
something that we are seeing in the past few months, and it's probably going to continue like that. The beauty of index investing is that it's based on real returns. Real returns means returns on top of inflation, right? So the whole modeling, the whole mathematical model behind how we decide how much we can spend is based on the fact that the stock market has returned positively over inflation for its entire history on average long term. And so it's included. It's just part of the math, and that's fine. So what we do is we simply adjust the amount of money we withdraw from our investment portfolio based on inflation. So usually we can withdraw, usually we can withdraw even more than that. But basically that's the math, that's how you would do it, and would be part of the model. And so it's included basically in the approach.
One question from my side, Sebastien, if somebody is, getting into this and hasn't really paid money management a lot of thought in the past and really wants to get into it seriously now, do you really help them with, the absolute basics? Like, this is how you track your money. This is sort of the template you can use. So do you really, I don't want to use the word spoon feeding, but a lot of people might need that. Do you guys help them with stuff like that?
Yeah, we don't have a specific program that is designed to do that, but there are resources that we share with people.
Okay.
Simplify doesn't have any specific program. There we have a free guide, 60-page PDF that's available to download for free. When you join the group, you go on the website, it's there. Mm-hmm. That has everything. Like, it's really a very well condensed summary of everything you need to know, from simple money management, debt management, all the way to investing and all the technical aspects of investing, and including financial independence, the math behind different aspects of how to handle different things when you get to retirement and all this. It's all in there with extra resources, links to all sorts of resources. So that's simplifies probably the best way to go for like a comprehensive overview. The Getting Started guide has everything.
Okay. Yes. And I see one more question from Anonymous. Please explain for listeners how the compounding interest works to grow the investment. Very simply, if you can just break that down.
Yes, so compounding interest or compounding returns is simply the idea that when your investment grows, it's based on how much was there at the beginning. After a year, say you had 5% and you start with $1,000. Well, you have 1,000 plus 5%, you have 1,050. So for the next time it goes up by 5%, it's 5% of 1,050, not just 1% of 1,000. So it's going to grow by more than just $50. It's going to be 50 plus 5%. So it would be 52.5. So, and every year, basically, it grows by more than that. And when you contribute on a regular basis, and at the same time, all the money that was there before is already working for you, at some point, this thing is going to be generating more money that you can actually contribute. And at some point, it will be generating more money that you can actually spend. Yeah. Simply because the return works on the entire money that's there. What we make sure is that we keep the money that we earn, we reinvest, we keep it in there so that there's more workers in the factory working for us.
No, I think that's a great explanation. Thank you so much. Guys, any other questions?
There's one question also from Anonymous early, a bit above.
Oh, really?
ETF investments. Yeah. So in contrast, ETF investments to go. What if I'm restricted to my own country index, at least for the coming 1-2 years due to the legislation? Ideally, you want to diversify away from your country in the sense that you're already dependent so much on your country for probably work and your housing and all this, which is why we like to invest in the global economy for wider diversification. Now, if that's not possible, then yes, local index is probably your best bet. I'm curious to know where you live and where such restriction exists, because I haven't come across this, but yeah, it could be the case. Now, I would make sure to do the research and see if there's a way to invest abroad. I think it has high value to be able to invest through the stock exchange in London, which is usually the best place to invest from for most people in the Middle East.
UAE, yeah.
From a tax perspective, ETFs based in London, well, traded in London, but domiciled in Ireland would be the way to go from tax perspective. And that is often available through online brokers, offshore brokers even called, that are not the local banks. So local banks might be restricted, but if you can open an account with a broker, any of the big brokers, and we often use Interactive Brokers and Saxo Bank and Swiss Quote, these are the main ones. If you can open an account with them from where you live, and yes, they have restriction on where people they accept. There's a few countries where they don't accept residents, and I don't know exactly which ones these are, but most people are able to open an account with one of those three, and from there you have access to the global economy, global markets.
Great.
So hopefully that helps.
Okay, Egypt.
It's possible to invest globally.
I think so. Yes.
You need an international broker, such as Interactive Broker, and then from there you have access to everything.
Okay.
Good then.
Great. Super. Thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate the engagement from the attendees. Like I said, this is just the beginning. We're going to have more webinars and we're going to have more sessions with Sebastien and one of your colleagues for the rest of the year. So we are in the process of setting those sessions up. Be sure to stay tuned on our LinkedIn, Instagram, website. We will be announcing all of that. But I really hope the session was useful. It was certainly useful for me, even though I've heard all of this before. It was good to get a reminder again and again. And oh, you know that, Bilal.
Yes.
Okay, great. And thank you so much to Sebastien, and thank you so much for all the attendees.
Thanks for having me.
And see you on the next webinar. Thanks, guys.